keeping the golden goose laying them eggs, looking after it.
Don't take any risks.
Thing is, with Anthony Joshua, he's Olympic gold medalist, and in the UK, he's a massive star. He sells out stadiums, 70,000, 90,000.
Huge star.
Huge star.
The reason I say it's a win-win for Jake Paul is because, listen, if he wins, then he's beating a former heavyweight boxing world champion, certainly one of the best heavyweights of his generation, and of course, a man that is way bigger than Jake Paul. Of course, it's a win. And if he loses, it's still a win for Jake Paul because he had the balls. He was man enough. He was willing to test himself. He would prove everyone wrong, all his critics.
I mean, it's come out of the blue, but it's intriguing. And I think from Jake's perspective, I think, he's had a lot of criticism about he is a pro boxer now. The way you want to look at it, he trains as a pro, but, and he's fighting as a pro. They said it's about time he fought some.
Joe Rogan and Tyson Fury discussed the Jake Paul versus Anthony Joshua matchup and questioned Joshua's decision. They say Joshua and his management are focused on money instead of real competition. Fury points out that Joshua should be fighting him or Deontay Wilder because those are true heavyweight challenges. Choosing Jake Paul looks more like a business move than a competitive one.
And I don't blame him because this is a business at the end of the day. And if I was his management team, I'd say stay away from Fury, stay away from Wilder, and we'll just fight the rest of the people and keep making plenty of money. Why do we need to fight these guys who are very risky?
Michael Bisping's reaction to the idea of Jake Paul facing Anthony Joshua is built on a simple point. For Jake, the situation carries no real downside. Bisping explains that Jake Paul has placed himself in a position where winning would bring him unbelievable praise, and losing would still raise his status. If Jake somehow defeated Joshua, even by luck, he would instantly gain the credibility that many fans say he lacks. It would mean he toppled a former unified heavyweight champion, something that even established fighters struggle to do. But even if Jake failed, Bisping believes the result still works in his favor because he would at least have stepped in with a world-class heavyweight. According to Bisping, this allows Jake to present himself as brave and ambitious, a man who is not afraid to challenge someone far above his level. For Bisping, the pressure lands almost entirely on Joshua because anything short of domination will make people question his seriousness as a headliner.
I'm not like out there on an island by myself. Everyone says the same thing, and he would potentially prove all of those critics wrong. Well, yeah, he would, maybe, unless there's some funny business, right? And for Anthony Joshua, as I said, this is kind of a lose-lose, right? Because if he wins, people are still going to say, well, you only beat Jake Paul, right? The man that lost to Tommy Fury, after all, right? That's the only loss in his record, Tommy Fury. You're telling me that Tommy Fury is going to beat him and then Anthony Joshua's not going to beat him? So if he beats him, he gets no credit. And if he loses, then holy sh**. Can you imagine? That would be the biggest downfall of any boxer's career. The reality is, he's not going to lose. There is no way on this earth that Jake Paul can beat Anthony Joshua in a boxing match. That's just a fact, okay? Look at what he did to Francis Ngannou. Francis Ngannou hits as hard as a Ford Escort, going 100 miles an hour or whatever that stat was. Comes from the UFC. He was the UFC heavyweight champion of the world. Has a good go against Tyson Fury, but goes up against Anthony Joshua and gets flatlined. Every single punch that was thrown was landed, and every punch that landed put Francis Ngannou down, okay? So to stand there and think that Jake Paul, who's much, much smaller, who has way less experience, that doesn't weigh anything near him, is going to have a chance, and not to mention the technical abilities. Let's just talk about that. Not to mention the technical abilities or experience. We're talking about an Olympic gold medalist, remember, from back in the day, who's then gone on to become a true British boxing icon or a worldwide boxing icon, let's be honest, right? There's no way that he loses to Jake Paul.
Joe Rogan highlights that Anthony Joshua is an Olympic gold medalist and one of the most dangerous punchers of this generation. In his view, Joshua would enter the ring determined to send a clear message. Rogan says Joshua would not just aim to win, but to make Jake Paul think twice before calling out real heavyweight champions. For Joshua, the fight becomes a statement of dominance rather than simple victory.
Oh my God, if he beat Anthony Joshua, good Lord. Good Lord. I mean, that's a big if, right? I mean, Anthony Joshua,
I do not think.
Olympic gold medalist, former heavyweight champion of the world. What he did to Francis Ngannou, good Lord.
Yes.
Do you want that smoke?
Yeah, I just think it's all about the promotion or whatever. I have no idea what the actual motivation that fight's not competitive at all.
Well, it's a dangerous fight.
Yeah.
Because Joshua's going to try to make an example out of him, for sure.
And will.
I mean, Anthony Joshua's one of the biggest one-punch KO artists ever.
Yes.
I mean, he's a one-punch fucking night-night guy.
Yeah.
You know, he's a great boxer, very skillful.
Yeah.
Frank Warren's take on the situation is more skeptical, but also very direct. He says the entire conversation began suddenly without any warning. In his view, all signs point to Jake Paul being the one aggressively pushing for this matchup. Warren argues that Jake is tired of hearing critics accuse him of easy matchmaking. Every time Jake fights someone smaller, older, or outside the boxing world, the backlash grows. Warren thinks Jake wants a fight that shuts down that narrative forever, and facing Joshua is the fastest way to achieve it. Warren also emphasizes that most promoters never expected such a proposal to appear, especially not from Jake's side. The fight sounds like a stunt, yet Warren notes that the YouTuber-turned-boxer seems determined to prove that he is ready for a genuine heavyweight test.
I respect them both. It's not a fight I even thought of. It's nothing to do with me to start with. I mean, it come out of the blue, but it's intriguing. And I think from Jake's perspective, I think, he's had a lot of criticism about, he is a pro boxer now. The way you want to look at it, he trains as a pro, but, and he's fighting as a pro. They said it's about time he fought some. I've seen some of the stuff, that's been said. When's he going to fight someone? Well, he's gone from one extreme to the other. That's what he's doing. So if that fight happens, you've got to take your hat off to him.
He got called out by Andre Ward, AJ. Would you rather see Jake fight AJ, which is obviously, as we know, a mismatch, or Andre Ward, who's been retired for, 4 years?
I'd much rather see AJ fight Tyson.
Oh, please. I dread to think how many times
we don't know if
you've
that's
done
going to
this.
happen, because the big man, he's filming, he's not made his mind up what he's going to do, and he certainly won't fight this year.
Ben Davison views the whole idea from a much harsher angle. When he compares Jake Paul's chances against Anthony Joshua, he goes back to Francis Ngannou's loss to Joshua. Davison points out that Ngannou, a far stronger and more natural heavyweight than Jake, could not remain steady under Joshua's power. He highlights how quickly Joshua dismantled Ngannou, saying that the gap between elite heavyweights and crossover fighters is simply too extreme. If Ngannou, who is physically huge and known for brutal power, could not stay upright for long, then Davison believes there is no serious conversation to be had about Jake Paul. Everyone already knows how a clash with Joshua would turn out, and Davison stresses that. The purpose of his argument is not to insult Jake, but to show how unrealistic the entire matchup seems when measured against real heavyweight standards.
In terms of a fight, Francis Ngannou is one of the most durable men on the planet. And look at what happened there. I don't think it's good for boxing, if I'm honest.
I was about to ask, obviously, if we were to see that fight, AJ would be a heavy favourite with, I'd imagine, 99.9999% of the sport. How quickly would you expect to see Anthony Joshua get the job done against Jake Paul?
He could go in there and do what he wanted. He could play with him if he wanted to, or dispatch of him.
Spencer Oliver approaches the topic from a completely different angle as he talks with a panel of analysts. He thinks there is a symbolic dimension to all of this. Oliver argues that if Joshua actually accepted such a fight, he would be stepping into a moment similar to what Muhammad Ali once did during his era, taking unconventional fights that drew massive audiences beyond regular boxing fans. Oliver notes that this matchup could open new marketing pathways and bring in millions of viewers who usually ignore traditional boxing. Even if the competitive level is not equal, the event still creates noise. In Oliver's opinion, Joshua risking his reputation to take part in something experimental shows how the sport continues to evolve. He believes Joshua could gain global attention from younger audiences who follow social media influencers more than boxers. This would allow Joshua to extend his star power and build a larger legacy in the entertainment side of the sport.
Anthony Joshua goes in, pops him a few times in the face, walks out of 150 million quid. No one will remember the fact he fought Jake Paul. They'll remember the fact he knocked Klitschko out in Wembley in 2017.
Totally agree with that.
So I'm kind of, whilst I don't like it, and I don't like the way that Jake Paul gravitates to these brilliant athletes and like a moth sucks the life out of them because he gets a benefit of association, because I think they deserve all the association. But he is a and there was opportunity there, wasn't there?
Listen, commercially, of course it works because it'll be huge and there'll be a load of money on the table. And for Anthony Joshua, it's like sort of, he's going to get rewarded very well with no risk, minimal risk, no risk at all. He's going to go in there and he may then put all this stuff to bed with Jake Paul and calling out all these different champions, etc., etc. So, of course it works. And when you're talking about, the credibility that Joshua's going to get. He's not going to get none now, but are people going to remember that? Of course they're not. Like, when he goes on to do what he does, didn't Muhammad Ali have some sort of strange fight in the middle of his career? Didn't he box? Yeah, he did. He boxed some non-boxing guy and whatnot. Like, people don't remember that. That's what I'm saying. Look, us as boxers, we don't remember stuff like that.
It was replicated in Rocky. So, he did a version of fighting Thunderlips, didn't he? So we all know that happens.
Absolutely. Joseph Parker says Anthony Joshua should stay focused on real competition if he wants to continue his boxing career. He believes Joshua belongs in meaningful heavyweight matchups, not entertainment-driven events. Parker argues that fighting influencers does nothing for Joshua's legacy, and that true contenders are the only opponents that keep him relevant in the sport.
Turki Al-Sheikh has said that he's interested in doing Anthony Joshua versus Jake Paul.
Let's talk about fights that make sense. Jake Paul's doing whatever Jake Paul does. If Joshua's serious about wanting to stay in boxing, then fight good, real fights, if that's what you want to do. I mean, if you want to go down this other road and do this, then that's by all means do it. But it's a different journey and it's a different pathway. I think as fighters who've been in the game for a long time, I want real fights. If I was given the opportunity to fight Jake Paul, would I take it? No.
Not even for the money, no.
No, like, I want to be champion of the world. That's my goal, and that's what I'm going to aim to achieve.
Chael Sonnen, however, is not convinced that any of this is even real. He warns that the public has jumped too quickly into discussing a fight that no officials have formally confirmed. Sonnen stresses that Joshua has carried British boxing on his shoulders for nearly 20 years and built a reputation based on discipline, professionalism, and dignity. To him, the idea that Joshua would suddenly abandon all of that to fight Jake Paul sounds suspicious. Sonnen argues that if Joshua really accepted such a matchup, many lifelong fans would lose respect for him. He believes the sport has given Joshua too much honor to gamble it on a spectacle. Sonnen also points out that Jake Paul's team has made no solid statement confirming serious negotiations. Until the promoters or the fighters themselves release a formal announcement, Sonnen considers this entire conversation nothing more than a rumor that spiraled out of control.
Done, right? Isn't that what we were all told? And I had reached out to Jake directly, but he didn't get back to me. I did get a response, but it was like, you know the response where somebody's like buying some time, or they just want to acknowledge, like they give you a receipt. I'm in receipt of your text message. They can give you an emoji or something like this, or sometimes there's even the automatic. I'm trying to remember what I got, but you can get like the automatic, I'll call you later. You know those? So even though I had said, hey, I'm looking for a confirmation of this fight, and he did respond, as I reflect back on that, it's like, well, he didn't respond confirming the fight. So, who did confirm the fight? So, I went to Helwani, and Helwani thought that it was confirmed, but he was a little lighter in the language than what I thought I remember hearing. And there's a number of boxing guys just saying, hey, that's not going to happen. And they had a few details, one of which was being Florida. And the Florida Commission would probably be open to something like this, particularly under the clause of exhibition. And then we'd all have to kind of hear, well, what are those rules and what are those stipulations? But that's reasonable to work with. But we haven't been able to get a confirmation from the Florida Commission. And now we're actually getting boxing guys on the inner circle. We're hearing from some British guys, from some fellow comrades to Joshua that said he wouldn't do that fight. He just wouldn't do that fight. That people would lose respect for him. That he has carried British boxing. This was one guy talking, but the guy said that Joshua has carried British boxing for 2 decades. And that while carrying British boxing on his back, if he was to go over and do a spoof fight against a YouTuber, now I don't look at Jake Paul that way. I look at him as a badass. I understand how greatly he is outmatched. I understand the lack of experience in comparison to Joshua. Believe me, I get it. But I don't dismiss him as a YouTuber, right? Look at him as a guy that went to the distance with Tommy Fury, not for nothing. So, when I'm listening to this gentleman talk, it does make me think, hey, where can I get this confirmed?
Simon Jordan's perspective is even more blunt. He calls the idea of Joshua versus Jake Paul a stupid fight and completely detached from the standards of real boxing. Jordan understands that there is massive money involved, possibly one of the biggest purses Joshua could ever receive, but he argues that a fight should be more than a financial transaction. Jordan believes this situation moves too far away from meaningful competition and leans too heavily into entertainment. For him, the matchup is not just unbalanced, but insulting to the athletes who dedicate decades to reaching Joshua's level. Jordan insists that boxing loses value whenever star fighters use YouTube personalities as opponents, instead of meeting actual contenders.
It's ongoing for a fight between Anthony Joshua and Jake Paul in December. What does it tell us, Simon? Does it tell us more, as I said in the introduction, about the falling star of AJ or the rising one of Jake Paul?
It tells you that there's a huge opportunity for enormous amounts of money to be generated around a fight that really has no integrity behind it in terms of as a fight, but in terms as a media spectacle and entertainment opportunity. You've got a very talented YouTuber that's built himself into a massive influence with huge following, and you've got a former two-time champion of the world that operates at a very high level of engagement. Whether he's a high level of performer anymore is a different discussion. So it becomes about how much can this fight generate, how many eyes on the prize. I mean, I spoke to his very close friend, Michael Jarman, about this very fight about 3 or 4 months ago, and he was like, "Oh, what do you think?" I said, "What difference does it make? Oh, it would potentially jeopardise his legacy." His legacy's sealed. You cannot undo the fact, whatever you think of Anthony Joshua,
It might
as
damage
a fighter,
it.
I don't think so. What it will do is increase his
Yeah.
bank balance. But I don't think. I think in the great. I mean, it didn't damage Muhammad Ali's reputation to go in with a sumo wrestler, did it?
No, but after, when Joshua was at his peak, Simon, if I had said to you there and then, do you know what? Maybe in December 2025, Anthony Joshua will fight a YouTuber.
This is the entertainment business, and Anthony Joshua is an entertainer, and you can't undo the fact that he won the world heavyweight championship twice. And he fought in some great fights.
So why does he need this?
Because he's in the business of entertainment. And if an opportunity is presented to him and someone wants to say that we can monetize this to the huge levels that are potentially available, why wouldn't you? It's a walk in the park.
You see, you're not having Saturday night.
Because I know
many people wouldn't have this.
Tony Bellew also adds his voice to the criticism and refuses to believe the fight is real until both men stand inside the ring. Bellew has always been outspoken, and he sees the situation as another example of boxing drifting away from its roots. He makes it clear that the sport requires credibility. For Bellew, the fight simply does not make sense, and he doubts it will ever truly happen. He believes the idea may remain nothing more than a promotional tease or an online rumor that never reaches the contract stage. Bellew argues that many people underestimate how difficult it actually is to finalize a fight of this scale. There are endless contracts, sponsorships, negotiations, broadcaster deals, and governing bodies involved. Bellew cannot imagine all these serious institutions supporting a mismatch that looks more like a circus act than a sporting contest.
Said, not done yet, but very, very likely. 8-rounder, and the reported figure is £70 million. When you see it unfold, what's your thoughts?
I don't believe a single thing until literally I see them in a ring together. He was supposed to fight Gervonta Davis, wasn't he? Who's 5 stone lighter and is 5 stone lighter and 8 inches shorter. So I don't believe anything. Until they're in a ring together, I don't believe nothing.
Obviously, AJ was meant to fight in an 8-rounder. I think Eddie said to me earlier against
an 8-rounder.
Yeah,
okay.
Against a top 120 opponent on BoxRec that none of us would have heard of.
Okay.
Just a kind of confidence, go and get a knockout type victory. I suppose you can go and do that against Jake Paul and earn an absolute fortune from
Listen, I've said before and I'll say it again. Boxing is a brutal, brutal business. Go and make as much as you can, as quick as you can. Once you've achieved your dream and goals of becoming a world champion, there's nothing left to do besides make money. What are you chasing? You've won all the belts. You know, I think he's missing a WBC. I think that's about it. Go and get the belts and that's it. Move on.
Do you believe it should be sanctioned?
What I believe doesn't matter.
No, but I'm just curious.
What I believe doesn't matter because some governing body will. Of
course.
Or some sanctioning body will. Of course. Some
the Florida State
organisation. Yeah, absolute maniacs. But you know, that's another argument. That's another cause. It's like The one I heard Chris Eubank Sr. talking about on the radio the other day. You're talking about safety of fighters. Champ, you were the worst for it. You went up to cruiserweight when you were super middleweight and didn't do it once but twice. And then you're saying people should have saved you from yourself.
That's it for today's video. Stay tuned until next time.